WFUZ-TV, Coastal Alabama, Northwest Florida, the People's Voice.
Hello, welcome to WFUZ-TV. I'm Blair Castro, and I'm here today with Thomas Jenkins. We have Cyndi Hadley in the studio today to talk a little bit about her journey as a grandparent, a parent, and a foster mom here in Baldwin County, and how she dealt with DHR. Ms. Hadley, thank you so much for being here today. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about how your journey dealing with DHR began.
In December of 2020, my grandchildren were taken by DHR. It was 4 of them. And their mother had gotten on drugs. My son was in jail, so he wasn't on the birth certificates, couldn't say where the kids could go or anything like that. So in February of 2021, they actually went into DHR custody. They were in a safety plan to begin with. They went into DHR custody in February of 2021. Still, I could not find out anything about them, couldn't communicate with DHR, nothing. My son got out of jail in April. He was adjudicated the father, and I started working then to get the girls placed in my home. I ended up getting them, and the caseworker I had at the time said that we needed to do kinship guardianship, and in order to do that, I would need to get my foster license. Now, at this time, I had 5 children in my home. I think they were like 9 and under. The baby was 7 months old. The oldest, which was my biological, was 9 at the time, I believe. And I was getting no help from DHR, nothing. Couldn't work because I couldn't afford child care for them. And so we started the foster classes. I finished them in February of 2022 and got my license. By then, we had a different caseworker. And that's when I started getting the help through DHR, was able to go back to work, and everything was going good. But I started noticing things that DHR was doing that they should not be doing, things that they were supposed to be doing that they wasn't doing. So the caseworker that I had at the time told me, call the state. So that's what I did. I called the state. So you call the state, tell them what's going on. They want to know your name, county, and all this, that, and the other. And I called the state probably 8 or 9 times about the different things that was going on with DHR. And every time I turned around, they were trying to take my license for this reason and trying to take my license for that reason. And the grandchildren ended up going back to their father in 2023, and I got another foster child. I told DHR to begin with I did not want teenagers, but I got a teenage foster, and still fighting with DHR about the stuff that they wasn't supposed to be doing, or the stuff that they were supposed to be doing that they wasn't doing. And I got 2 more foster children that were younger, a baby, and she was 8, I think, whenever I got her. And my biological child, I went to work. My oldest foster, she was 19 at the time. They were going to keep her until she was 21. We went to work, had the baby at daycare with us, and my biological child at home called me. She was sick. She needed to go to the ER. So I took her up there, and they were talking about that she may have appendicitis. Well, I had the middle foster child with me, left the oldest and the baby at the daycare, and DHR called me saying that they'd gotten a report saying that I was abusing the 2 youngest children. And I didn't even whoop my own child. So they come up to the hospital, got the middle foster child, went to the daycare, got the baby from the daycare, and left the oldest foster child with me. DHR policy is if you have a report and you're a foster parent, if you have a report, all foster children are to be removed from your home until the investigation is over. I had 3 foster children. They only took 2. They left the oldest one with me. The next day, the investigator come out to the house, real snooty, said that they couldn't find anything, that they couldn't find any reason for me, me abusing the kids or whatever. So they wanted me to go take a drug test. So I was, not a problem, let's go. I beat her to Foley. She had to go to Robertsdale. I beat her to Foley from Bay Minette to get the drug test done. The urine test I passed. It took about a week for the nail test to come back, and I failed for methamphetamine and amphetamine. And I knew right then something was not right, because I am not on drugs, hadn't been on drugs. So I got to researching, and promethazine, which is Phenergan, it's anti-nausea, will cause you to fail a drug test for methamphetamine and amphetamine. And I had taken that 3 months prior to the drug screen. Whenever I called DHR and told them, this is what I took, this is what it does, she told me that I took that medicine too far back for it to show up on my drug screen. I said, so the drug test goes back a year, but 3 months ago I took this medicine and that's too far back? I said, make it make sense to me. So, of course, I immediately took another one. Again, I failed it again. At that point, whenever I failed the first one, they come in and took my biological child and my oldest foster. So I'm without any children in my home. I'm a hot mess. Worried about losing my job because I was working at a daycare. The boss of my daycare, the owner, was a nurse, which was at my doctor's office, so I had to go to my doctor to get antidepressants for all this, but I couldn't tell her what was going on because she owned the place I worked at. So finally, I started fighting with them to get a 4th drug screen done, and I wanted to go to a different company instead of the one that they had sent me to in Foley. And I knew that they had one in Mobile that they would take, but she told me that was the only one they had, was the one in Foley. So I went ahead and went on down there, done the 4th one, passed it, no problem. Now, I've not seen the first result on any of these drug screens except for the urine. Whenever I took the urine test, they showed me it was negative. All I can go by on the other 3 tests is what DHR told me. I've not seen them. So, I ended up losing my license, my foster license because of it, but I did get my biological child back. The oldest foster child that I had in my home, I was in the process of adopting her. Well, when all of this happened, I'm no longer eligible for adoption through DHR. So, they sent me a letter saying that I was indicated for child abuse because of a failed drug screen, and I could appeal it. So I wrote a letter appealing it, and they sent me a certified letter saying that court was February 26th of last year, and it was this year, February 26th of this year, and on February 20th, well, 2 weeks before court, the original investigator called me wanting to know what my address was so she could send me papers for court the next week. Well, I'm at work, a daycare, dealing with children. They were loud, and I just gave her the address and got off the phone with her, and I was like, wait, court's not next week. It's 2 weeks from now. And so I immediately, within 45 seconds, called her back. And, of course, they did not answer. And I left a message, who I was, what I wanted, when they said my court was, and her saying it was next week. I needed someone to call me and let me know when court was. When I got a break at work, I called the state. Same thing, telling them that I needed to know when court was, and the state told me, well, we'll contact Baldwin County and have them call you. The next day, I called Baldwin County, no answer, left a detailed message again, called the state again, told them, they told me the same thing, they'll contact Baldwin County. So on February 20th, now I did that every day, calling the state and calling the county. On February 20th, I got a call at 11:15 My court was supposed to be at 11 on the 26th. At 11:15, I got a call from Baldwin County attorney wanting to know if I was coming to court, and I was like, yeah, I'll be there next week. She said, no ma'am, court's today. I said, no ma'am, my paper says it's on the 26th. And she said, well, let me go talk to the judge and see what she says, and I'll call you back. And she called me back a few minutes later and told me that I had 20 minutes to get to court or they were going to dismiss my case. Even if I had been able to leave my job, I would have never made it from Bay Minette to Robertsdale in 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I got the letter stating that I was indicated for child abuse, ended up losing my job. And I mean, if something happens with anybody in my family, DHR steps in and takes the children, they're not going to be able to be placed in my home now because I've been indicated for child abuse.
So going back to the initial report that they had to come out and take your one child out of daycare and then the other one from the hospital, did they give any reason of why that initial complaint came through or what their reasoning was?
So the original report was that I had physically and mentally abused the two youngest children.
Do you know who made that report or where they got that from?
I do not.
That's strange.
They will not tell you.
Do you feel like it was retaliatory in some way or?
Absolutely. Like I said, I had called the state of Alabama probably 10, 15 times about things that DHR was either doing that they wasn't supposed to or not doing that they were supposed to be doing. I did not find out until after I got the indicated letter, after I had done missed court and everything because they told me the wrong date. I didn't find out until then that when you call the state of Alabama to report a county, the state of Alabama takes the report and then sends it to that county for that county to deal with. What is that county going to do with a report on them? You're just going to throw it away. So Baldwin County DHR absolutely knew that I was calling the state, telling them the shady stuff that they were doing and not doing, and they were trying to get my license taken, and they did.
Can you give us a couple examples of some of the stuff that you had reported that they probably weren't happy about?
Well, so there was my daughter-in-law. Her child had been removed by DHR, and her caseworker was saying that she was not doing services, she was not passing drug screens, but my daughter-in-law was sending me the sign-in sheets. She'd take pictures of it and send it to me, sending me pictures of her past drug screens, and her worker was saying that she wasn't doing any of this stuff. They will not put in their purchase order for these parents to go to these classes that DHR is demanding them go to. So it's supposed to be a year the kid is in foster care. At the 12-month mark, they're supposed to be working either towards adoption or reunification with the parent. Well, these DHR workers was wait until 6 months into the case to put these purchase orders in for them to go to classes that's going to take them a year to do. So at 6 months, they have 6 months to finish these classes that takes a year. Just things like that. Twice a year, DHR is supposed to spend, I think it was $250 per child for clothes. During the spring and during the fall, they're supposed to buy these children clothes. That was not happening. DHR workers they're supposed to go to the foster parents' homes once a month and physically see the children.
The thought that I've had was just there seems to be a telecommunications problem in the county. You can't get the phone answered. You can't get an email returned from an office.
You cannot. Even whenever I was foster, now the caseworker I only worked with 3. The first 2 that I had was great. They were absolutely amazing. The last one that I worked with, she was good for the children. She was on top of things. She did them purchase orders for their clothes. She come out and saw these children once a month like she was supposed to do. But as far as communicating with the foster parents, it really was a hit and miss. You know, she may or may not return your call. It may be 4 or 5 days. But to actually call DHR, you're not getting an answer. You're not getting an email. You're not getting any response. It's just crickets.
Did you ever actually get a revised piece of paper that set your court date after they gave you the first one that apparently had the incorrect date according to them?
No, I never did. I got a certified letter and a regular letter in the mail, and both of them was the exact same thing. You know, saying that court was February 20th, and I had court February 26th at the DHR building at 11 o'clock. And even after I called, you know, when the caseworker had called me and said court next week, and I called her back and I was like, no, you know, the paper I got said the 26th. Never got a call back on that. Whenever I spoke with the DHR attorney when they called me on the 20th, she said, well, the only paper that we have says the 20th. And I'm like, well, you know, my paper says the 26th. How can you expect me to be at court on the 20th if my paper says the 26th? Mm-hmm. You know, I've got to take off work. I work at a daycare. It's not like I can just jump and run. You know, there's people in Baldwin County, depends on me being at work for them to be able to work. Mm-hmm. So they don't care. They didn't care. They never sent anything else out. Never would return my call in that whole week that I was calling them trying to find out for sure when the court date was. They would not return my call.
When you were going through the issues caused by the drug test results, did you feel like DHR was moving the goalpost on you, like you would do things that they instructed you to do, but then it became, okay, well, but you have to do this now, or, well, you didn't do this?
Okay, so with mine was just a safety plan. So with the safety plan, the paper that she filled out said that they were removing my child, and the only thing I had to do was pass a drug screen. They didn't get and work any services that DHR saw fit. They never went out and saw my child. They were supposed to go out and see her face to face. They were supposed to call her. They never once went out and saw her. They never come out and talked to me. Anytime I called them, I called the caseworker one time 15 times in a day, trying to get the results for my drug test that I already knew was in, but she would not return my call. When they finally decided that it was negative, it was on a Friday, and the testing site is closed on Saturday. I knew that a negative drug screen had come in that Friday, so I called the worker, did not answer, left a message. She did not return my call. She called me on Saturday. And whenever she called me, she said, you can go get your child now. And I'm like, who is this? I already knew who it was. But I was like, who is this? She said, and she told me what her name was. I said, okay, I can go and get her. She said, yeah, you've got a negative drug screen. I said, okay, did you let the father know? I've already spoke with him. And she just hung up. And I'm like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they don't communicate at all.
There seems to be a big problem, too, with the clerk of court giving people inaccurate dates and messing up and making typos, typing names wrong, typing locations wrong, getting just their information in the really wrong place to people. The clerk's office, from what I understand, it's like that all across Baldwin County.
My paper come directly from DHR.
Okay.
Mine come directly from DHR. The court hearing was at the DHR building. While I was waiting for court, all of this happened. They come in the beginning of the end of July, the end of June. Took the kids at the end of June. All of 21 days, my biological child was gone, which she was at her father's, so I wasn't stressing too much. But this is a child that follows me everywhere I go, calls me 100 times a day if I'm not with her. I started researching whenever I got the paper. It was December before I got the paper stating that we had court in February. So the judge that was going to hear this case used to work for DHR. So I've got a judge that used to work for DHR The hearing is going to be at the DHR building. Right off the bat, I'm going to lose. You know, I mean, this is people that's already against me that's hearing my case.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wasn't fair to begin with.
What would you like to see implemented in terms of changes for foster parents who go through something similar with DHR?
I'm not against DHR, let me say that to start off with. I'm not against DHR. There are children out there that absolutely do not need to be with their parents. There is also children that are in the foster system that absolutely do not need to be in the foster system. The DHR needs a lot of change. They need to start communicating, for one. They need to start going by their own policies. You know, they have policies, but if this one here don't want to do it, they're not going to do it, and there's no repercussions from it. You know, just like with the kids not getting their clothes. If this caseworker doesn't want to put the purchase order in and she doesn't do it, nothing happens. And you know, it's not like the worker goes and buys the clothes. The worker gives the purchase order to the foster parent, and then the foster parent goes shopping. And it's not hard stuff. You know, communication, that is not hard to do at all. Putting in these purchase orders is not hard to do. These parents, so they have all parents, if it actually goes into DHR custody, which with my case it did not, it was just a safety plan, but if it goes into actual DHR custody, then they're gonna have parenting classes. They're going to do a psychological evaluation. Most of them's going to have drug classes, rehab, all this, that, and the other. So they give them, you know, this much stuff to do in a year. You've got to maintain stable job, maintain a stable housing, have a vehicle. How are they doing this? They've got classes 4 or 5 times a week and still have to maintain a job. How are they maintaining this job, doing all this stuff 4 or 5 times a week?
And going to all the visitations. That's like extra stuff they want in there. It seems like a lot.
And then, you know, you was talking about the goalpost. So they go in, you know, the parenting classes right off the bat you're going to have to do. You know, the psychological evaluation right off the bat you're going to have to do. And then they go see Dr. Carney, and he adds another 8 or 9 things. Well, DHR just picks, you know, 3 or 4 little things here, and they go to the ISP, and so now they have the parenting classes. They have they've added rehab to it, and they've added individual therapy to it. So you start working on those 3 things. And your next ISP meeting, then they add in this and this and this. So now there's 6 things you have to do, you know, while still maintaining a job, still maintaining stable housing, still going to see your kid. And you're going from seeing your kid 7 days a week for most people to 1 hour a week. But DHR wants to talk about the trauma that the parent has caused. What trauma is DHR causing? I get that there has to be some kind of stipulation on this. You know, you can't just see your child when you want to, blah, blah, whatever. But what is that doing to the child? And then they go and, like with mine, whenever I got the 2 younger children, I was their second foster home. They had went into care in October. I got them right before Thanksgiving of the same year. That was the second foster home that they had been in. I kept them until June. Then they went into a 3rd foster home. You know, and DHR just will go in there and snatch these kids out of these foster homes and throw them into another foster home. You know, what kind of trauma is that? They want to talk about how these kids have, you know, all this trauma, and DHR is causing a lot of trauma for them too.
What advice would you give for people that are going through a similar situation? How can they get involved and fight DHR if they feel like they've been wronged too?
First off, hire an attorney. Do not get you a court-appointed attorney. The court-appointed attorneys go in and DHR says, okay, Your Honor, this is what we're doing here, and blah, 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 and the court-appointed attorney, the one that is supposed to be helping these parents, says, okay. But that's not what the parent is wanting. But the court-appointed attorney doesn't tell what the parent wants. They just go along with whatever DHR says.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The GALs, they are horrible. I had two GALs. Well, I had more than that, but the two. So with my grandchildren, I ended up having 5 of my grandchildren. 4 was on one case and 1 was on another case. So with the girls, their GAL, I had them. They're supposed to talk to the children once a month. Also, the GALs are. I had them girls for maybe a year before I even knew who their GAL was. I had the girls for 2 years, and she had never set eyes on them children. With the grandson, his GAL, she was good. She was good. He had been in foster care. It was right at a year, and I was fixing to get him placed in my home. And then I started thinking about all of the trauma that was going to cause him. He was going from someone that has had him basically from birth to me, someone that he doesn't know, and within a few months going back home. What kind of trauma is that causing? So I was going to, leave him at the original foster parents' home, and the GL was like, you don't need to do that, because if you do, and something happens, you cannot get him. Mm-hmm. So I went ahead and got him, but she took the time to explain stuff. These GLs, they need to do better with these children. They're supposed to be the children's voice, and they're not.
We've heard that from a few other people too, and that's unfortunate.
It is.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming here today to share part of your journey with us and your story. We'll definitely be following along to see where things end up and to follow your family, and hopefully everybody will be back, and it seems to be going that way, but I'm thankful that you're willing to speak up and talk about these issues, and they just don't get away with what they're doing nonstop, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're here with Brooke Darby. Brooke Darby is Cyndi Hadley's daughter-in-law, and she's also went through similar experiences with DHR. They are coming in cases that are kind of intertwined in a little bit, and I wanted her to talk about her experiences as well as a parent who has been through confrontations with them. And Brooke, could you talk a little bit about your experience with DHR and the things that they put you guys through?
Yes. Okay, so back in February of 2022, I had my now 3-year-old son. He was born premature. My water had broke at 31 weeks. And my doctor in Foley had sent me over to USA Women's and Children's because he was so premature. I stayed over at USA for about a week and a half before I actually gave birth. Well, during that whole process, the caseworkers of USA Women's and Children's had came in and talked to me and was letting me know that my files had stated that I had failed urine tests at some of my doctor's appointments for marijuana. So they then proceeded to tell me that they were going to have to contact Baldwin County DHR and make them aware of these things. Now, like I said, my son was born premature, so he was in the NICU. During this whole process, I mainly talked with the people at USA and I hadn't heard nothing from Baldwin County DHR. The hospital actually released me and allowed me to stay in one of the labor and delivery rooms for 2 more days until I was able to get into the Ronald McDonald House. I was finally able to get into the Ronald McDonald House. I was spending every hour, minute, second that I could with my son in the NICU. And I had gotten a phone call at 7:30 in the morning. And it was an investigator from DHR stating that I had court at 8:15 for a 72-hour hearing. And I explained to her I didn't know anything about this. I was in Mobile. I was at the Ronald McDonald House, and there was no way that I could make it there. So we ended that phone call, and I just went on with, everyday life, back and forth from Ronald McDonald House, taking care of my son who was in the NICU. About a month goes by, and I remembered walking down to the NICU that morning, and I had cleaned up, got ready to get my badge on at the desk, and they told me, Miss Darby, you're not allowed to come back here. So I freaked out, caused a little bit of a scene, and was wanting answers. So I tried to get a hold of DHR, no callbacks, no answers, no anything like that. So I went back to the Ronald McDonald House. I had packed my stuff up, and I had went back to my father's house back across the bay. Well, a couple of weeks, almost a month goes by, and I get a messenger notification stating that so-and-so wants to send me a message. So I opened up this message, and this lady said, Miss Darby, I do believe that we have your son in foster care. I'm gonna start crying. So I responded back to her, and I said, yes, that is my son. Oh my gosh. So she had notified me and told me that she would like to carry on a relationship with me and get me back around my son, and she had no clue what was going on with DHR. She said that DHR pretty much placed him in their home for immediate adoption. It took forever for me to hear from DHR, so she met up with me on Easter of 2022 and met up with me at church and allowed me to see my son. He was about a month old. And I knew right then and there I needed to start doing the things that I knew they were going to want me to do. So I put myself in Alta Point, and I put myself in parenting, and I was on the lookout for a counselor because I knew that I was going to have to do some individual counseling therapies. And in this whole process, I'm doing all this by myself, paying for this by myself, maintaining a job. And the Alta Point classes was pretty crazy. Those start off 3 nights a week for almost 2 hours. So about 4, maybe 5 months goes by. I finally hear from a caseworker. And this caseworker, she pretty much tells me, I need you to go to a psychological evaluation over in Mobile. I told her, I said that was fine. I had DHR transport pick me up, and I went to Mobile with Dr. Carney for 8 long hours and sat on a computer and took a psychological evaluation test, just for me to go and sit in his office for about 10-15 minutes and talk about everything except the case. He had brought up past history of my ex-husband and 4 kids that had nothing to do with this case. Had asked me questions on why did my ex-husband lose custody of my 4 older kids. Once again, nothing to do with my son who was then in care. When it was over, I remember DHR transport picking me up, and the lady that had dropped me off, she had her boyfriend pick me up, and the car reeked of marijuana. She brought me back home. I continued doing all my stuff. About a month goes by, and my caseworker states that I'm failing drug tests. All these, the reports from Alta Point are just horrible. things like that. So I knew right then and there that I needed to do something different. So I pulled myself out of Alta Point, enrolled myself into Big Fish, paid for Big Fish from out of my pocket, completed 6 months of Big Fish, 6 months of passed clean drug tests with them, and DHR didn't want to take it. My report come back from Carney. It was 68 pages long, and there was just so many things that he wanted me to do. He wanted me 2 years plus in-house rehab. I refused. And let me say this, all the way up until this point, I was fighting by myself. I didn't go to the 72-hour hearing, so I didn't have a court-appointed attorney. I didn't know anything of that. So they tried to put me in the 2-year rehab. I said, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I'm maintaining a job. I've maintained sobriety for almost 7 months. You're not, you know, I refused. So I ended up paying out of pocket for an attorney. This attorney used to be an attorney for DHR, and DHR kind of let him go because he was winning cases against them. So I paid him. We ran with it. He got it to where I was able to start getting visitation. I think my son was about six months old when I started getting visitation with him. Visitations went great. We got to the point where I had done everything. The parenting classes was over. The 6 months of the outpatient rehab was over. I was still maintaining Celebrate Recovery every Monday night. I was in the process of doing family counseling of a counselor that my attorney recommended. He said that he wasn't going to allow me to go through any counselor that they recommended. So I went through family counseling. We talked about relapse prevention. You know, I was with her for about 3 months. So my attorney thought that it was necessary that for us to move to unsupervised visitations, where transport would take him and drop him off with us and then pick him up. So we went to court on that, and DHR refused. DHR stated that I had my 8-month-old baby in a little bitty rocking chair, a baby rocking chair about this tall, that DHR actually had in the playroom. She told them that I had the 8-month-old in the rocking chair with blankets around him, propping him up, and she was not okay with that. I was able to bring food, and I had brought food, some French fries for him. He was about 8, almost 9 months old, and I was opening up the French fries and feeding him the soft part on the inside of the French fries. And she said that was a hazard, and she was not okay with that. So she was not going to allow me to have unsupervised visitation. Thank goodness I had this attorney. He stepped in and he said, that's just absurd. I ended up getting it. And everything, once I got this attorney, the ball started rolling. He was a bulldog. He went in there, and he didn't care what DHR had to say. It was what he had to say, and that's what they went with. My spouse, he had a court-appointed attorney, and that attorney he went with what my attorney did. We, in the beginning, this foster mom got my son for straight adoption, is what it was supposed to be. We still have a family relationship with this foster family. And not only did it take a toll on their whole family, because they got this baby that was a month old. They thought they were going to adopt out. They loved and cared for him. But they worked with me on my side. And we still have a relationship with him. So we decided that we were going to transition after paternity and stuff was done in court. We were going to transition him from their home to Cyndi's home. And just like I said, once I got that attorney, everything went smooth. But it's just the Carney, that was just trauma. That was trauma. the things that, I mean, I sat in that guy's office for 15 minutes and he did not speak one word about Raiden. It was about my 4 older children. And then just to come back, I accidentally got a hold to all 68 pages, and just sitting there reading it, I was just disgusting. It was disgusting.
You say accidentally, so I just want to highlight that a little bit. You're one of the few people that has actually seen their Carney report. A lot of people never get to see it, and decisions are made based on these reports that they never actually even put eyes on. So that is, you are an exception in that way, I believe, and I'm happy that eventually it did work out for you, but I hate that you even had to go through that.
Yes. My case rolled out to almost 2 years. And it could have all been stopped 6 to 8 months.
What justification did DHR give for immediate adoption? Any?
I have not really asked that question to the foster family. I'm assuming because I didn't show up to a 72-hour hearing, but I was never given the option for relative placement. Once I did, that was another big fight with me, was once I did hear from a DHR worker, I asked questions. Because my mother-in-law was saying, hey, look, why didn't they do this? You need to ask them this, this, and this. So I asked questions, and she ended up getting irritated with me because I kept asking and asking and asking. She gave me the option to give her 2 names, and I gave her 2 names. One was to my older brother, who he's never had a criminal record. His wife just retired from the Gulf Shores Police Department and stuff. She tried to tell me that those 2 names were not good. So this whole time, it's like I'm fighting for my child, but they are fighting for me to fail. The drug test, they were saying that I was still failing drug tests of methamphetamines and heroin and marijuana and all kinds of stuff. And I had the proof. But they didn't want to hear nothing about that.
And this is not a unique story.
How did they even get away with the drug test accusations when you have proof that you have negative drug tests? Like, how are they even not being checked, and how do they do that?
That's a question that I still ask myself to this day. Like, I mean, it goes back to the corruption. Like, they know. They have to take these documents to a higher power, which is their boss. So I don't know. That's like a why question. Something that we will never know.
I'm guessing financial incentives, because they get money off of the adoptions, and they have that financial incentive to think, okay, these people are vulnerable in my eyes. Let me see what I can do to make money off the situation. Mm-hmm. Sadly, that's the reality of it, I think, and it's definitely not right.
No, it's not. For the ones that's out there fighting now, don't give up. It's hard. It's a long road. Make sure you lawyer up. Don't trust anything that they say. Don't trust anything that they do. But even in recovery, baby steps, 1 day at a time, and do what you have to do to get those kids back. I am 3 years and 4 months sober. I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom. I'm a full-time college student. I graduate in the fall with my MBM. Life's great. He just turned 3 in February. My life's great. That's all I can say is life's good now.
I'm so glad you got that reunification. It evades so many people. So it took a lot of fighting and legal help and people in your corner, but you made it work. So that is definitely to be commended. And I'm really grateful for you guys both coming here and talking about this and being willing to speak up and being willing to keep fighting for your babies.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.